Genial, convivial, and amiable host, Brian Fisher. Great to have you in the conversation today. Coming to you live from our remote studio at the Truth for a New Generation Apologetics Conference in Spartanburg, South Carolina, organized by our good friend and fellow AFR talk show host Alex McFarland. And honored to have with us here in our studio someone who's been a guest on Focal Point before, but Dr. Terry Mortenson from Answers in Genesis. I'm going to introduce him here in just a second, but here, what I want you to do is if you've got a question on the creation evolution issue, Terry Mortenson's the guy to ask. So give us a call, 888-589-8840. We're going to take phone calls in this segment. Any question you've got about the creation evolution issue, throw it to Terry, and we'll let him take a swing at it. Dr. Terry Mortenson, Answers in Genesis, 888-589-8840. Terry Mortenson grew up in an education system where evolution was taught as fact, so he's been where a lot of folks are, and attended the University of Minnesota. You wound up getting a PhD in the history of geology from the University of Coventry in England. I don't have to know anything, Terry, about University of Coventry. Just the fact that it's the University of Coventry and it's in England tells me this is a prestigious degree. Anyway, welcome to Focal Point.
Oh, good to be with you, Brian.
So great to have you with us. And Terry, you're with Answers in Genesis, so tell us a little bit about some of the issues that you work on for AIG.
Well, I'm one of the full-time speakers, so I go around and speak in churches primarily, but also sometimes conferences like this, a few debates I've been in over the years, and sometimes seminaries and Christian colleges. And then I do writing and editing and whatever else they tell me to do.
So Terry Mortenson is our guest. If you've got a question on the creation evolution issue, give us a call, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. And Terry, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, touch on briefly, and then we'll go to the phones, and that is the sort of interaction between creation scientists, people who support scientific creationism. I'm not a scientist, but I support scientific creationism. You know, I've also got friends in the intelligent design movement, and I've had them on my program, and I read their stuff, and I use their stuff, often use their stuff in preparing for debates that I've been involved in. What is the state of communication, connection, relationship right now between the intelligent design community and the scientific creationism community?
As far as I know, there's not a whole lot of interaction other than some awareness of each other's literature and that kind of thing.
Is the sticking point for the people in the intelligent design movement basically Genesis 1?
I would say the sticking point is really that the ID people, most of them are accept the millions of years. Many of them accept the Big Bang, and they don't really want to discuss Genesis and other relevant scriptures related to the origins question. They just want to basically bring up arguments against Darwinian evolution and ignore the geology and the astronomy.
Yeah. Well, and their information is very useful. I did a debate with Vic Walczak, who was an ACLU attorney that won that Dover case that prohibited Dover from teaching creationism, and I used the intelligent design stuff from Discovery Institute to prepare for that debate, and it was very valuable, but I do part company with them on that issue as well. Let's go to Matt in Moline, Illinois. Matt, you have a creation science question for our guest, Terry Mortenson. What's on your mind?
I sure do. Thank you for your for all the work you gentlemen do. I'm a young
Terry, do you need a little more volume? Terry's going to need a little more volume in his headset. Okay, keep talking, Matt, and we'll pick up with you.
Okay, yeah, I thank you for your ministry. I thank you and Ken Ham and all the young earthers out there providing good biblical theology to the creation story. But I do have a question that in the beginning God created light. Well, God is known as light, and God is light. And so I wonder where the darkness came from was there light and then Satan fell and then darkness? Or, you know, where did that darkness come from that God had to create a light for? And I'll just hang up and listen.
Good question, Matt. All right, thank you.
Okay. Well, the statement God is light in, for example, 1 John 1 is not it's not literal. It's not that God is literally light photons. in 1 John, he's comparing light and darkness in the context of sin and righteousness. So light is often a metaphor in Scripture. When Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world," he wasn't literally physically just a ball of light. It meant that he brings truth and righteousness to a world that is in darkness because of sin. So I don't think in Genesis 1:3 that when it says, "Let there be light," that was the light of God, because it's created light. And God isn't a creature; He's the Creator. So I think it was some other source of light that God created on day one, and the darkness is just the way that is literal darkness.
Because what that would indicate, if you got darkness, wouldn't it indicate, Terry, that there was a source of light? It was coming from a point in the universe, and therefore you could have darkness as objects rotated and turned on their axis.
But
and so
that
forth.
Darkness in Genesis 1 is not associated with sin the way the word darkness often is in the rest of Scripture. Because Genesis 1 ends by saying that God looked at everything He made and it was very good. And so the darkness and the light are good.
Let's go to Jamie in Luberton, Illinois. Jamie, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher and my guest, Dr. Terry Mortenson. What's your question?
Yes, I was just wondering, is there any archaeological evidence for giants, like the Nephilim that are mentioned by Moses, and the giants that were children from the fallen angels? And is there any archaeological evidence for any of that? Because I'm just fascinated by it. And I'll just
all right, Jamie.
Your remarks on the radio.
Thank you. So a question really about the Genesis 6 and what's going on there.
I'm not aware of any solid archaeological evidence for giants. I don't know if any, we don't know how many Philistines there were that were really large. Of course, we know about Goliath, but if their bodies are not preserved in some way, we'd never know, because we all return to the dust.
Now, this is a common question that comes up in dealing with the issue of origins. Who these Nephilim were in Genesis 6? What's your take on that? I know there are a number of different perspectives.
There's been three main views in the church. One is that this is some kind of demonic involvement with man. Demon-possessed men would be the sons of God, and the daughters of men would be, non-demon possessed. Others say, no, the sons of God are the line of Seth, and the daughters of men are the line of Cain. Others have some arguments from Scripture that sons of God refer to royalty, and daughters of men are common people.
So where do you come out?
Well, I kind of lean towards the first one, but it's difficult because the Scriptures say that angels don't marry.
Yeah.
But then you have the passages in Jude and 2 Peter 2 that angels left their proper domain, and it's in the context of talking about sexual immorality. So it's a tough passage because we don't have very much to go on. So when we have passages like that, we should be very careful to not become dogmatic and die on a hill.
Let's go to Tammy in Erie, Illinois. Tammy, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher, my special guest, Dr. Terry Mortenson. What's your question for Terry today?
I'd like to know, as far as when it says God created everything in 7 days, how long is one of His days? Is it kind of like a 24-hour period like ours, or is it something that could be more like a year?
All right, great question. This is one of the standard questions in the issue.
Yep. Well, there are a number of indications in Genesis for determining the meaning of the word day. And I can give you an English sentence. Back in my grandfather's day, it took 12 days to drive across the country during the day. I just used the word day in 3 different ways, and you know the meaning in each case in that sentence because of the context. Well, the context of Genesis 1 shows that these are normal days, just like our 24-hour days. He calls the darkness night, he calls the light day, and then he calls the whole cycle day, just like we do today. He at the end of each of the days, he says, and there was evening and there was morning one day. There was evening and the morning a second day. And everywhere that the Hebrew words for evening and morning are used in the Old Testament, they always mean the literal part of a literal day.
Yeah, that's always, Terry, seemed to me to be fatal to the view that it's a day age, that these represent epochs or ages. Well, what's the evening and the morning? How does that fit then?
Right. And then on day 4, you have the sun, moon, and stars created to tell, so that man can tell time, and the time periods, he says, are years and seasons and days. And then you have the 4th commandment in Exodus 20, that God told the children of Israel to work 6 days and rest on the 7th because he created. So there are a number of other biblical reasons that we could conclude that these are literal days. Genesis 5 says that all the days of Adam were 930 years. So if we start messing with the days, how old was Adam?
Let's go to Rick in Lubbock, Texas. Rick, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher, my guest, Terry Mortenson. Turn down your radio down and let us know what's on your mind. What's your question?
Are you talking to Rick?
Yeah, go right ahead, Rick. We got you. Turn your radio down. We got you.
My radio is down, and
great.
I've got it off speakerphone. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Brian, for having me on your show, and say hello to Dr. Mortenson.
Hello.
Great. What's on your mind?
My question is related to the age of the earth, what we can ascertain from Scripture, and then also from a geological standpoint, where we are on carbon dating, and is there a fallacy with the way that scientists use that method to, say, date dinosaur bones?
All right, that's a complex question. Terry, can you stay over the break for a few minutes? Because that's going to take more than just 60 seconds to answer that question.
Yep.
But let's start into, we got about 60 seconds where you can start into an answer to, well, no, actually we don't. I just got the 1 minute signal, so we are into the last minute of this segment. So we'll save that question, Terry, coming out of the break, and maybe have you answer that question before we let you go, because it has to do with dating, with carbon dating, with the geologic column. I mean, you've got an entire array of issues there to deal with. So maybe we can talk a little bit about carbon dating and the geological column and the fossil record and how that fits into the issue of the age of the Earth. So Dr. Terry Mortenson from Answers in Genesis will be back to give us a short seminar on the age of the Earth according to both the biblical account and the best of what we know in science. You are listening to Focal Point on AFR Talk. I'm your host, Brian Fisher. We'll be right back in 2 minutes, coming to you live from the Truth for a New Generation Apologetics Conference. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.